4. Let's talk about something most people overlook when analyzing international politics. World Geographic. Not just maps and borders, or not just names on paper or pins on a map. I'm talking about what lies beneath the surface, about why those borders matter. Geography, you see, 4 isn't just about where a country is. It's a leverage, influence, and our advantage. It's about how land and location shape a strategy, a power, and therefore outcomes. And in this context, Pakistan's location is not just important. It's its greatest asset. We often hear about alliances, ideologies, or treaties and values when analyzing US foreign policy. But strip all of that away and you'll find that what remains underneath, the part most don't see, is the hard, cold reality of where countries sit on the map and what doors they open. Pakistan is one of those doors. It is no exaggeration to say that geography is one of the main reasons America continues to support Pakistan, even when doing so ruffles feathers in New Delhi, even when it complicates relationships with a more democratic, more economically dynamic, and more ideologically aligned India. Why? Because strategy doesn't care about sentiment. Strategy cares about position and Pakistan is a position of immense value. Zoom out, let's take a satellite-level view of the world. Since the end of World War II, America's global strategy has been about one thing, proximity to pressure points, whether it's Europe during the Cold War, Japan and Korea in the Pacific theater, or the Middle East for energy and security, the US has always sought footholds near flashpoints. It positions itself wherever it can go, monitor rivals, shape outcomes, and stay one step ahead. Or now place Pakistan in that model. Right there at the intersection of China, India, Afghanistan, and Iran, a geographic jackpot. One that offers something most countries can't, a front row seat to several regions of US concern, Central Asia, the Middle East, South Asia, and the increasingly tense Chinese borderlands. That intersection is not just a spot on the map. It's a strategic throne. To the west of Pakistan lies Afghanistan, a country that cost the US over 400 lives, 2 decades of investment, and hundreds of billions of dollars. The withdrawal 2021 didn't end America's interest in Afghanistan. It just changed its tactics. America still needs eyes on the ground, still needs logistical pathways, still needs to use counterterrorism, and still needs a presence near that volatile region. With boots off the ground in Kabul, Pakistan becomes a doorway, a conduit, whether willingly or through quiet caution. Pakistan provides the air access the US can no longer demand directly from Afghanistan, from drone operations to intelligence collaboration, from airspace rights to covert logistics. Pakistan is the AU middleman, the backdoor entry into a neighborhood America can't afford to ignore. And in global politics, access is everything. Now look north to China, the long game in global dominance, the real challenger to US hegemony. Economically, technologically, militarily, the US isn't preparing for short-term skirmishes, it's preparing for long-term rivalry. And every move China makes is under the microscope. Enter the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPCE, on $60,000 billion investment for a central piece of the OA Belt and Road Initiative. CPC connects China's western provinces directly to the Arabian Sea through Pakistan, therefore giving Beijing faster trade routes, shorter energy pathways, and potential naval footholds. It is infrastructure, but it's also strategy in concrete form. Washington knows this, and it will fears blow it. Supporting Pakistan doesn't mean stopping China, but it means getting you closer, having visibility, applying pressure, creating uncertainty. It's the old game of keep your friends close and your rivals within drone range. If the US lets Pakistan slide fully into Beijing's hands, it loses a critical strategic outpost. But that's not an option. Now you might ask, but isn't Indiabal the better bet? More democratic, bigger economy, global tech powerhouse. Doesn't it make more sense for America to big on New Delhi? On paper, Yes, in theory, absolutely. But woe international relations aren't chessog, they're poker. And in poker, therefore, obvious position and psychology matter as much as the hand you're holding. India may share democratic ideals with the West, but it's not willing to be anyone's pawn. India is Jew fiercely independent. It buys Russian oil despite Western pressure, or it signs defense deals with the US while maintaining strategic ties with Iran. It pushes back on Western interference in its domestic policies, or it champions multipolarity. It refuses to choose sides. And that's the irony. The more powerful India becomes, the less controllable it becomes. Therefore, America may admire India's rise, but AU can't dictate its direction. That's not how India operates. It makes its own rules. And while Washington respects the independence, it still needs leverage in South Asia. Pakistan, with all its chaos, volatility, and contradiction, offers that leverage. There's another dimension here, one that doesn't show up on maps but echoes through the corridors of think tanks and war rooms. In psychological pressure egg. The US, knows that keeping some level of engagement with Pakistan creates a balancing act for India. It reminds Delhi that Washington has options. That the partnership is valuable, but not exclusive. That in geopolitics, nothing is guaranteed. This dynamic also plays out in military logistics. Pakistan provides Lago access to air corridor Go logistics hubs who cover channels that India simply can't or won't provide. The US, and therefore may not fully trust Islamabad, but it uses it because that's the nature of power. You use what you need, even if it's imperfect. Especially if it's imperfect, and not forget domestic politics, both in America and Pakistan. In the US, Pakistan has long been seen through a dual lens, a problematic ally in the war on terror, and a nuclear-armed state that must be managed. No one in Washington wants a rogue nuclear Pakistan. And engagement is often seen as a way to contain risk. In Pakistan, America's support, economic, military, diplomatic, remains a point of national pride, political bargaining, and strategic relevance. It's not love. It's do utility. None of this means the US favors Pakistan or over India. Far from it. India remains a core partner in technology, in defense, in values. But America's foreign policy isn't about either or. It's about calculated balancing. Therefore, Pakistan remains an essential counterweight in that equation. Now take a step back and understand the larger point. Geography is power. It's silent, but it dictates everything. You can build economies, you can elect leaders, you can write constitutions, but you can't move your borders. You are where you are, and that shapes who you are on the world stage. Pakistan has many challenges: economic instability, political unrest, or security threats. But it also has something few nations possess: strategic location at a geopolitical crossroads, a location that ensures it will never be ignored. Not by China, not by India, and certainly not by the United States. So next time someone tells you geography doesn't matter in a globalized world, remind them of this: roads can be built, policies can be changed, alliances can shift, but you can't escape where you are. And in global politics, where you are determines Jew who needs Yob, who fears Yob, therefore, and you who can't afford to let you go. Pakistan, for all its flaws, remains needed, and that is its greatest strength. Trust factor: why Indians over China and the West? This is happening right now, and the world is watching. Let me make something very clear. In the 21st century, trust is currency, more valuable than ore, valuable than gold, more valuable even than data. Trust is the foundation of modern diplomacy, global investment, and long-term strategy. And right now, in a world where alliances are fragile, and where economic stability is becoming the exception, India is emerging as one of the most trusted growth partners on the planet. You see, we are moving into a new era, an era where countries don't just want power, they want predictability, they want stability, they want consistency. Therefore, Europe wants partners who flip overnight because of regime changes or erratic policy shifts. Therefore, the Middle East wants long collaborators who won't hijack deals with ideology dominance or hidden conditions. For Africa wants allies who respect sovereignty, not manipulate it. And in that vacuum of uncertainty, India stands out not as the loudest, or not as the most aggressive, but as the most reliable. Why? Because India isn't erratic, it isn't authoritarian. For it doesn't behave like a superpower that wants to be feared. Instead, India is AU stable, transparent, and strategic, all at the same time. For it's the kind of partner you can build with, not for 5-10 years, but for 50 years. India is where visions go to mature, not collapse. Therefore, and if you want facts, hard data, not just sentiment, let's talk numbers. France isn't just signing defense contracts with India, for it's forming joint ventures, technology transfers, co-production, and shared R&D Germany. It's not just exporting cars, for it's importing digital innovation from India, especially in AI and automation. For the UAE and Saudi Arabia aren't just interested in trade routes, they're investing billions into Indian infrastructure, renewable energy, fintech. Therefore, why in deep tech? Because they've seen the one thing that matters most. India delivers all. Doesn't, and therefore, India doesn't make promises in flashy press releases only to fall short behind closed. India builds quietly, steadily, relentlessly. Therefore, India launches its payment systems that don't just work in boardrooms. They work at the street vendor level and scale to billions. And therefore, India builds expressways and digital highways side by side. It's not just imagining smart cities, it's implementing them. From Kerala to Gujarat to Telangana, that kind of execution, that's rare, and that's what makes India bankable. Therefore, that's what makes India a magnet for foreign capital, global partnerships, and strategic alliances. But there's something even more powerful, and therefore, something more rare than execution. Respect. India doesn't come with political strings attached. It's not exporting ideology. For it's not demanding that others conform to its systems, values, or visions. It doesn't use sanctions as weapons. For it doesn't make alliances based on superiority. Instead, it offers due partnerships, grounded in mutual respect and shared interest. That's why, especially in the Middle East, countries are leaning toward India, not just economically, but diplomatically and even culturally. You see, for many of these nations have had their share of Western arrogancy, the lectures, the double standards, the conditional aid. For they've also tasted Eastern authoritarianism, the hidden deals, the debt traps, the lack of transparency. But India brings something different. For the understanding, it brings respect for ancient cultures, shared spiritual values, and long-term vision that aligns with the aspirations of sovereign nations. India doesn't need to dominate the table to lead. It builds the table and invites others to sit as equals. And that is revolutionary. Let me tell you something in business. Whether it's Tesla, SpaceX, or Neuralink, the best partner is the one who stays consistent under pressure, who respects the mission and who shows up when it counts. Why? For India is that partner in a time when global markets are unpredictable and political alliances are shifting like sand. India is the anchor, or the stable node in a sea of volatility. So yes, the Middle East is turning toward India. Europe is turning toward India. Africa is quietly beginning to engage more with India, and soon the entire global South and even parts of the Western world will pivot in that direction. Therefore, not because India is perfect, no country is, but because trust is rare and India has earned it. You don't bet on noise. You bet on substance, and right now, India is all substance. Now let's talk about something truly historic, the EU-India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, or GEU-IMECU. This isn't just another trade route. This isn't just geopolitics on a PowerPoint. This is a complete re-engineering of the global flow of goods, capital, energy, and influence. It's the first jobby transcontinental corridor that connects Gulf Mumbai to the Mediterranean via the Gulf. It bypasses choke points. 4. It avoids overdependence on China's Belt and Road. And more importantly, it symbolizes something bigger. It symbolizes trust in India's leadership. The US is backing it, the EU is backing it, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and even Israel are on board. And who's at the core of this project? India. Because it's not just about logistics, it's about reliability, about knowing that the nation you're building with won't weaponize your dependence won't walk away mid-project, and who won't compromise your sovereignty. That's the India difference. Look around. China's Belt and Road is facing backlash in Africa and Latin America. Loans have become burdens. Infrastructure has come with strings. Influence has begun to feel like interference. Meanwhile, India's approach is soft power through hard infrastructure. It's not here to trap. It's here to build and empower all. And that shift is not going unnoticed. In Africa, Indian medical missions, tech hubs, and agricultural innovations are gaining traction. In Southeast Asia, countries are hedging Chinese dominance by strengthening ties with India, and therefore, even in the Indo-Pacific, India has become a central pillar of security architecture through Quadrilateral bilateral defense or strategic maritime presence. Let me blunt, in a world where China plays hard, the West plays selective, and who Russia plays coldib, or India plays smart. And more importantly, India plays pheasant bully. It doesn't threaten. It builds leverage through relationships, not ultimatums. That's what nations want now, especially nations that are tired of being used as pawns on a geopolitical chessboard. They want respect, or therefore. They want voice, and they want a partner who listens as much as it leads. India is becoming that partner. Let's not forget something else. In a time when global authoritarianism is rising, from surveillance states to one-party systems, India stands tall as the world's largest democracy. Yes, it's messy. Yes, it's diverse. But that's what gives it moral weight. It doesn't fear dissent. It absorbs it. It doesn't suppress identity. It celebrates it, that pluralism is not just cultural, it's strategic. It gives India the ability to work with Islamic nations, Bab Christian nations, all Buddhist nations, Ziebo secular nations, all without friction, because India has lived diversity for 75 years. It doesn't need to fake it in foreign policy. So here's what's happening. The world is moving away from dependency on superpower giants and toward trusted collaborators. That's what India is becoming. Not a pole of power, but an arbu bridge of trust between East and West, North and South, democracy and development, growth and sustainability. Therefore, India doesn't need to become the next America or the next China. It's becoming India, and that's more than enough. Therefore, that's exactly what the world needs right now. So if you're watching this and you're wondering where the next decade of opportunity, collaboration, innovation, and impact will come from, don't watch Silicon Valley. Don't just watch Shanghai or Brussels, but watch Delhi, watch Bengaluru, watch Mumbai, watch India rise, not with dominance, but with dignity. IMSC Corridor, a civilizational alliance. The MSC Corridor is not just a trade route, it's a civilizational alliance. A strategy, 21st century Silk Road with India as the Ankorb. Now, I've built companies that push the boundaries of transportation from rocket Sol to hyperloops, from autonomous cars to planetary logistics. So believe me when I tell you, infrastructure is just about moving goods. It's about moving power. And IMEC, the India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, is nothing less than power in motion. It'll be strategic power or economic power, diplomatic power, flowing from India through the Middle East into the heart of Europe. It's not just a connection of ports and rails. 4. It's a goo shift in how the world works. Oh, so let's break this down. What is IM? It's a GEO multimodal corridor that links India's western port to the UAE and Saudi Arabia, therefore, then pushes forward via rail networks through Jordan and Israel, finally reaching Europe through Greece and Italy. But that's just the surface. Therefore, layer in electricity grids or blue hydrogen pipelines and blue fiber optic cables and you're not just building a route, you're building a GEO lifeline for the future. A lifeline where containers are just the beginning. Or what truly flows through IMEC is UE innovation, Geo and information. The three forces of 21st century dominance. Therefore, the three real levers of modern influence. And guess who's driving the engine behind it all? Or India, because while China to dominate the developing world through its Go Belt and Road initiative, backed by opaque loans Libu debt diplomacy, and imperial overreach India is doing something radically different. It's not building empires, it's building trust. Or it's GEO trust-based infrastructure, not traps. It's backed by open cooperation, blue transparent financing, and blue respect for sovereignty. This isn't a grab for dominance. It's a GEO call for balance. The Middle East gets it. Europe gets it. The world is beginning to understand it. 4. The Gulf, once the kingdom of oil, is transitioning to a knowledge economy. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, they're reinventing themselves. Therefore, they don't want overlords, they want partners, they want a technological transfer, blue education exchange, blue clean energy innovation of. 4. Who do they trust? Not China, not the old colonial West. They trust India, because India doesn't exploit, India doesn't impose. And therefore, India understands Europe sees the same writing on the wall. It needs a GEO diversification away from China in everything from critical minerals to software to pharmaceuticals. 4. Europe wants supply chains all routed in democracy, reliability, and strategic neutrality. India fits both columns. Hub trusted by the West. 4. Respected by the East, or a bridge nation with ancient roots and modern execution. Let's be honest, 4. What India is doing right now with IMEC is civilizational engineering. Think about the implications, short delivery times between continents. 4. Trade routes that touch 3 billion people. Green corridors powered by hydrogen, not diesel. Seamless movement of goods, energy, people, and data, not the cost of sovereignty, but in service of shared prosperity. And here's the kickering: no war, no colonization, no threats, just GEO vision, diplomacy, and execution. That's what sets India apart. While superpowers flex with aircraft carriers and proxy wars, therefore is building something stronger. Partnerships that can't be bombed, bullied, or bought. Or India is showing the world that soft power backed by smart infrastructure is the new blueprint for sustainable influence. And IMEC, it's not a one-off. 44. It's just the beginning. This is how real superpowers are built, not with missiles, not with manipulation, but with corridors of trust, or GEO flows of progressal. Now let's go deeper. In the age of artificial intelligence, space exploration, and GEO energy transformation for the real power doesn't lie in oil rigs or landmass. It lies in GEO intellect, code aim, in AI ideas. Therefore, in the minds that can turn a satellite into a map of prosperity, in the engineers who can turn a port into a platform. And right now, one country is rapidly becoming the intellectual capital of the planet. That country is India. You want to know why the Middle East is turning to India. 4. Why Europe is leaning toward India. It's not just because of trade, it's because India brings brains without arrogance, stability without stagnation. Therefore, innovation without interference. India is young, with the largest working age population in the world. India is digital, leading the charge in fintech, e-governance, and telecom. India is democratical, not perfect, but transparent, adaptive, pluralistic, and most importantly, India is consistent. It doesn't zigzag with every election. It doesn't silence its neighbors. 4. It doesn't put nations in debt to gain leverage. It listens. it learns, and it Abu leads quietly. By example, let me give you a visual. Or while some nations build Wu walls, India is building Wu corridors. While others weaponize Buch U dependence, India offers Jew interdependence. While others isolate, India you connect it. And in today's fractured world, is geo-revolutionary. The IMEC corridor is India's vision of global order without domination. It's a civilizational offering of trade without control, for development without subjugation, and innovation without ideology. From the ports of Mundra and Lavasheva to the hyper-modern logistics hubs of Dubai and Abu Dhabi, to the transnational rails of Jordan and Israel, to the entry points of Piraeus and Genoa. What you're seeing is a history being written in steel, silicon, and sustainability. And guess what? It's already begun. No longer are we in a world where all roads lead to Washington or Beijing. A new axis is emerging, one that runs through New Delhi, and therefore Riyadh, Tel Aviv and Rome, one that's inclusive, forward-looking, and we're built to last for. So if you're asking what the future looks like, don't look at the loudest voice in the room. Look at the most reliable one. Therefore, don't look who controls borders, look at who connects minds. And right now, India is connecting minds, regions, and futures like no other. Therefore, the India-Middle East-Europe economic corridor is more than strategy. It's more than geopolitics, or it's a good blueprint for the world we want global, decentralized, democratic, and driven by dignity. So yes, when I look at IMEC, I don't just see trade, I see a trust, transformation, and tomorrow. And India isn't following the future. India is building it ebb. Therefore, India's tech and talent takeover isn't coming. It's as already here. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss the first most important innovation wave of the 21st century. They figured it out. India figured out what some in the West are only just beginning to realize. That the future doesn't belong to those who talk the loudest. It belongs to those who build. And as India is building with talent, with tools, and now with terrain, for decades, Indian engineers, scientists, and Evers doctors have fueled innovation in Silicon Valley, London, Berlin. They were the minds behind the screens, the keyboards, the labs. Creating impact quietly, globally. I've personally worked with Indian talent at Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and I can tell you firsthand as they're world class, not just in intelligence, but in execution, not just in work ethic, but in resilience. Their thinking is deep, their adaptability unmatched. But here's what's changed. And this is not a small shift, as India is no longer just exporting its talent. India is building with it right at home. Think about that. India is launching its own satellites, guys, landing on the moon and building as mission critical defense tech. India created UPI the unified payments interface, arguably the most advanced real-time payment system on earth. While some nations still juggle card networks and third-party processors, India built a platform that works at a village level and scales to 1 billion users. India has become the birthplace of unicorn startups, AI research labs as EV innovation hubs, and as green tech accelerators. And guess what? It's not foreign-led, it's not homegrown, funded, coded, or scaled by Indians in India. You know what that means? It means India isn't just playing the game anymore. India is setting the rules. Let's talk global partnerships. Germany isn't just shipping BMWs anymore. It's investing in Indian quantum computing and EV battery production. Saudi Arabia isn't just exporting oil. It's collaborating on AI research with Indian tech firms. Dubai isn't just welcoming tourists, it's welcoming Indian fintech, health tech, edtech platforms that are transforming how business gets done. India has gone from being the outsourcing capital to becoming the epicenter of tech ecosystems. This is no longer about manpower, it's about mind power. What used to be outsourcing is now full on partnership model. From AI to aerospace, from blockchain to biotech, India is showing up not just with with resumes, but with their solutions. Europe sees it. They know they need to reboot their aging innovation engines. The Middle East sees it. They want to diversify from hydrocarbons into digital economies. And India sees Kazakh's opportunity. India sees Kazakhstan its moment. For India is no longer the support act. It's the headliner. Now, you might say, well, we've seen Indian CEOs before.
Sure.
Sundar Pichai at Google, Satya Nadella at Microsoft, Arvind Krishna at IBM, Shantanu Narayan at Adobe. But the real flex isn't that Vex Indians are leading global giant Skive. It's that these kinds of minds are now staying in India, building in India, creating global impact from Indian soil. This is not hype. This is gravity, is pulling the world in, because talent goes where vision lives tests. And right now, India has vision. If you're building for the future, whether it's AI, as clean energy, space tech, as neuroscience, next gen agricultures, or as autonomous mobility, you'd better have India in your strategy, because India isn't catching up anymore. India is quietly leading, relentlessly, consistently, not with noise, but with results. Now let's zoom out a little further. In the old world order, neutrality was seen as weakness. If you weren't picking a side, you were seen as passive. But in this new global architecture, where trust is rare and dependence is risky, strategic neutrality is not weakness, it's power. And no one embodies that better than India. While the West is caught in ideological battles and proxy conflicts, while China plays the game of economic coercion, LVX, opaque lending, and as is geopolitical poker, India has taken a different seat at the table. India doesn't need to choose sides, because it's becoming the side others choosy. India is now the evers bridgy between East and West. Between tradition and innovation, between scale and soul, this is a country that in a single week can host the G20 data, launch a lunar mission pass a data protection bill, and there's onboard 5 million citizens into digital banking, all without firing a single shot. That is real power, a power of doing, the power of trust, the power of building when others are burning bridges. And as AI reshapes our realities, as energy transitions accelerate and as space becomes the next frontier, India is at the forefront, not just as a contributor, but as a coordinator of the future. The future will not be divided into Cold War camps. The future will belong to the connectors. Those who integrate systems, those who balance values with vision, those who innovate without intimidation. And right now, India is that connector. So here's the reality. India's time isn't coming. It's already here. India is no longer asking for a seat at the table. India has built the table and the world is pulling up chairs. It's time we all recognize what's really happening. This isn't just a tech surge. This is a civilizational moment powered by brains, belief, and bandwidth. So the question isn't, will India lead? The question is, are you ready to collaborate with the new center of innovation gravity? Because the train has left the station and it's headed toward Paksara, future shaped in Bengaluru, driven by Mumbai, coded in Hyderabad, and launched from Sriharikota. This is India's decade. This is India's moment. And this is just the beginning. For India's neutral but assertive diplomacy, India is doing something radically different in the 21st century. It's staying independent, it's thinking long-term, and it's operating with clarity. Look at how India handled the Russia-Ukraine war. The West wanted India to fall in line. Russia expected loyalty. What did India do? India chose India. It kept buying discounted oil when it made economic sense for 1.4 billion citizens. But it also sent humanitarian aid to Ukraine. It condemned war but didn't collapse into ideological theater. That's not indecision, that's discipline. And the world noticed. Europe, even with its disagreements, respected India's stance. The Middle East admired it because India didn't fold under pressure. It stood tall, made its own call, and kept its dignity intact. That's what makes India different. It doesn't chase approval. it earns respect. 4. You've got a country that trades with Russia but also hosts US defense drills. It builds infrastructure with the UAE while maintaining cultural ties with Iran. 4. It partners with Israel in tech while supporting Palestine's rights in international forums. This isn't fence sitting, this is geopolitical mastery. 4. Because here's the thing in a polarized world, the power doesn't lie with those screaming from one corner. It lies with the center of gravity, the one who keeps talking to everyone, building bridges where others burn them. And right now, India is the only major power that can sit at every table. East, therefore, West global, North global, South, and be taken seriously. This kind of balance, maturity, and sovereignty is extremely rare, and countries are noticing. 4. That's why Europe wants more of India as a moderator, a partner, a supplier, and a friend. That's why the Middle East is deepening ties, not just in oil, but in education, technology, and diplomacy, because India doesn't judge, it listens, it builds, it respects. And that approach, it's winning the future. 4. Let's stop confusing silence with weakness. India's neutrality is not passive. It's laser-focused strategy wrapped in humility, backed by strength. 4. And guided by purpose. And in a world full of noise, India's calm clarity is magnetic. You know what's interesting? 4. In a world obsessed with hard power, missiles, markets, media control, the most underestimated force today is cultural gravity. And when it comes to that, India is a black hole, pulling the world in, not with force, but with connection. Especially in the Middle East, India isn't just respected, it's familiar. It's trusted, it's rooted. We're not just talking about modern trade or politics here. We're talking about thousands of years of civilizational ties, of shared wisdom and mutual influence. And here's where it gets truly powerful. India isn't telling the world to copy it, it's inviting the world to collaborate. That's why you're seeing joint universities, cultural festivals, tech exchanges, and diplomatic alignments emerge across the Middle East and Europe. Because India doesn't just export goods, it exports trust. In global diplomacy, trust is the most valuable currency, and India has it in abundance. That trust is built over centuries, maintained through balance, and deepened by action. It's not something you can manufacture overnight. You can't fake stability, you can't fake heritage, you can't fake dignity. India's rise isn't loud, it's layered, it's rooted, it's inevitable. And the world is turning, not because it was forced, but because it feels safe navigating in India's orbit. When conflicts arise, when talks break down, when tempers flare, leaders are asking, where's India on this? Not because India is imposing. Therefore, but because India is trusted, that's rare, that's power, the future won't be shaped by domination. It will be shaped by those who can connect ancient wisdom with modern clarity and diplomatic neutrality with strategic vision. And right now, India is doing exactly that. So the next time you hear neutrality, don't mistake it for indecision. When you see restraint, don't mistake it for weakness. Therefore, this is design. This is India, a country that can dine with Washington, toast with Moscow, pray with Mecca, and innovate with Tokyo without losing its identity or dignity. That's not passive, that's peak power. And the world is finally beginning to understand that. Deep Middle East cultural roots linkage, shared ideas, shared philosophies, shared migrations, and more recently shared growth. Let's not start with statistics. Over 9 million Indians live and work across the Gulf region, but this isn't just a labor statistic, it's a human bridge. Indian teachers, engineers, doctors, and business owners are helping build modern Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Riyadh, and Doha. They're not just guests, they're contributors, and that builds something money can't buy: emotional equity. But now the story is evolving. The Middle East isn't just importing labor from India anymore. It's importing education, healthcare, startups, innovation, and trust. Let me give you examples. The UAE made history by introducing Hindi in its courts. That's not just policy, that's respect. Saudi Arabia is signing tech and AI pacts with Indian firms because India is producing not just software but solutions. 4. Indian universities like Bates, Pilani and Amity are opening campuses in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, training the next generation on Middle Eastern soil. Indian films, music, fashion, they dominate cultural spaces from Cairo to Kuwait. This is soft power done right, not imposed, not bought. 4. Just earned through decades of shared progress. And the best part, India doesn't come with an agenda. It doesn't tell you how to run your religion. 4. It doesn't impose democracy at gunpoint. It doesn't fund proxy wars or demand political loyalty. It says, 4. We will work with you on your terms as equals. And that message, it resonates deeply in a region that's seen enough interference from the West and enough pressure from the East. Therefore, so what you're seeing now is this quiet cultural shift. The Middle East isn't just looking west anymore, it's looking east toward India. Why? Because India is that rare nation that understands both ancient civilizations and digital disruption. It brings wisdom and Wi-Fi, temples and technology. 4. Humility and horsepower, that's powerful. So whether it's helping design smart cities in Saudi Arabia, powering fintech in Bahrain, 4. Co-developing hydrogen corridors with the UAE, India isn't forcing itself into the room. It's being invited. 4. Because the Middle East has realized something profound. You don't just trade with India, you grow with India. 4. And that's the kind of partnership the future demands. If there is one truth I live by, whether building rockets, electric cars, 4, or solar panels, it's this: the future belongs to those who decarbonize fastest. The world is standing at the edge of an energy cliff. Europe knows it. The Middle East knows it. Everyone's scrambling for a plan, a partner, a path. 4. Clean energy pivot, India leading the green revolution forward. And here's the twist most people didn't see coming. Therefore, India is already halfway up the mountain. Let me explain. We're not talking about vague climate pledges or photo op summits. Or we're talking about actual progress, real deployment, green infrastructure at scale. India is the third largest producer of renewable energy on Earth. 4. It has one of the most aggressive and achievable net zero targets, carbon neutrality by 2070, but already ahead of schedule in multiple sectors. 4. The International Solar Alliance, co-founded by India, now includes over 120 countries. 4. This is turning India from just an energy consumer into a green superpower. That's huge because Europe needs clean alternatives fast. 4. The Middle East, once built on oil, is racing to diversify beyond it. So who do they turn to? Not China with its geopolitical baggage, not the West. 4. With its regulatory delays, they're turning to India because India moves fast, stays neutral, and scales sustainably. 4. Take green hydrogen, one of the most transformative energy sources of the future. India isn't just experimenting, it's scaling. 4. Hydrogen hubs are going live. The government is investing billions, and India is partnering with nations like Saudi Arabia and the UAE to co-develop tech or storage and distribution. You want solar. India built the world's largest solar parks in deserts, on rooftops, even on floating water bodies. You want EVs. 4. India is building its own electric car ecosystem, including batteries, components, and charging grids. And soon it will be exporting EVs globally. Therefore, and here's the game changer, India is building green not just for itself, but as an export model for developing nations. That's exactly why Europe is now investing directly into India's green tech sector, because they know India can do clean energy at scale, at speed. Or, for the middle budgies, this is a dream scenario. They have capital, land, and ambition. India brings execution, talent, and tech. It is a win-win. Therefore, and let's not forget, India is achieving all this with one of the lowest capita emissions in the world. That's right. While some countries lecture the world on climate, but emit like crazy, India is walking the walk with 0.4 billion people in tow. 4. So when we talk about the clean energy future, this isn't a maybe. This is India's moment. It's the engine of scalable sustainability. 4. And the world's smartest nations know that. Europe sees it. The Middle East sees. And now more than ever, they want in. Voice of the global south, investment, and therefore, India speaks for billions. Into two camps the world is dividing: the old world powers, still trying to dominate from the top. 4. And the rest of the world, the global south, rising with one voice, one purpose: to be seen, heard, and respected. And leading that voice, India. 4. Let me put it simply: in a world where superpowers are distracted by conflict, India is focused on connection. While others fight for dominance, 4. India is building diplomacy through dignity. That's why countries across Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East are turning to India. Therefore, not out of fear, not because they have to, but because they want to. India doesn't show up with conditions, it shows up with solutions. 4. It doesn't talk down, it talks across, as a partner, peer, as a friend. Look at what happened at the G20 summit in 2023, hosted by India. Therefore, that wasn't just a meeting, it was a reveal. India brought in the African Union as a permanent member. 4. It created space for emerging economies to lead the conversation, not just follow it. 4. It bridged West when few others could even speak both languages diplomatically. And what did the world see? They saw mature, calm, confident India, speaking for the billions who've been overlooked. Not with arrogance, not with revenge, but with vision. This is where Europe and the Middle East get it. 4. They understand that to have real reach in the 21st century, you can't just rely on military alliances or economic zones. 4. You need moral credibility and cultural capital. India has both. That's why France is co-developing humanitarian AI systems with Indian engineers. 4. The UAE is funding Indian-led initiatives in Africa on digital finance and education. 4. Germany is opening climate dialogue through India to connect with the global south. Because these nations realizing if you want to talk to the rest of the world, 4, you'd better speak through the voice that billions trust. And today, that voice is India. Final thoughts from Elon Musk: want to engage the next 100 years. 4. Don't just talk about the developing world. Partner with the country that actually understands it. And that country is India. India has lived the journey from colonized to globalized, from scarcity to surplus, from follower to frontrunner. So when India says, 4, we represent the global south, it doesn't need to prove it. It embodies it. That's why the world is turning east. Not just for technology, 4, not just for trade, but for balance, wisdom, and future leadership. And here's the most exciting part: India isn't trying to replace America. It's not trying to copy China. India is trying to be India, fully, unapologetically, and globally. And that, my friends, 4, is exactly what the world needs right now: a nation that builds, a nation that connects, a nation that uplifts, and a nation that leads with purpose. So yes, 4, Europe is turning India, the Middle East is turning to India, because in a world that's uncertain, fragmented, and exhausted by division, 4, India stands as a beacon of unity, innovation, and trust. The future isn't being invented in Silicon Valley alone, it's rising in Bengaluru. 4, it's expanding in Hyderabad, it's scaling in Mumbai, it's being imagined in Delhi. India isn't the story of tomorrow, 4, India is the story of the next 100 years.